Morning, I just seen Bob actually post a video about me. I mean, it's not about me, it is about the gospel, it is about following the gospel. I gave Bob some really, really good questions. He didn't answer the question on economics well. He talked about that the economy had to care for the weak. He talked about that the economy had to basically give people doing a trade a fair price for their labor. So, you know, it was a reasonable answer, but there was no economics in there. And this is where I've got to play a very careful game with Bob. I mean, I don't want to go in for sort of Jono and Doctor Who tactics. Hopefully, Doctor Who's there today. Doctor Who has challenged. His real name's David, but I call him Doctor Who. He doesn't like it because he says Doctor Who's demonic, which it pretty much is. I mean, it's also scientifically impossible. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into that. But anyway, Bob I gifted him loads of questions. Now, I also gifted him the question on rights of children and women. Now, of course, one of the first champions of children's and women's rights was Jesus Christ himself. Read your Bible in entirety. And one of the things that used to happen, there's two things, sadly, that used to happen in the Roman times. One was infanticide and one was paedophilia. Well, the infanticide actually started to die out in the empire. What would happen was that Christian families would take these children. And by the way, if you don't know what infanticide means, it means if you don't want the baby, just leave it out to die. A bit like the Democrat Party. So basically, that's why abortion up to birth is such a horrendous, evil act, because by then the baby is clearly capable of living and you are killing it. And so this is a game where you have to tread a careful line with Bob and his false doctrine and gospel, because the essence of the disagreement I have with Bob is he has the cart before the horse. Well, you see, in Roman times, the gospel literally spread. It spread all over Asia Minor. It spread into Europe, and it is a voluntary decision. Do you either accept it or don't you? And so during the period between 33 and 400 AD, this faith grew. It was a positive influence on Europe. And in the case of infanticide, it was reduced, A, by the number of people turning to Jesus, and secondly, the fact that Christian families were going out and rescuing children who were, the potential victims of infanticide. The second one was paedophilia. Now, Bob, again, he gave a reasonable answer again. As he said, the legal age of consent, I don't know what the age is in this country, because I think it's 16. I should know, actually. But he's correctly pointed out that the age has been lowered in Iraq and stuff like that. Bob is he's like an encyclopedia, and that's why people love him so much. So again, I gifted him some questions there. What else did I ask? He asked him about that. But then I asked him the question which he can't answer. Christianity was perverted in the year 400 by two emperors. One was Constantine, and the latter one who then made Christianity the sole religion. That's not what this faith was supposed to be. Now, Bob talks about Charlie Kirk a lot, and Charlie Kirk did go around using this label. And as he said, the founding fathers were overwhelmingly Bible-believing Christians, but they wrote a constitution that separated church and state. So I do understand the Bible in the sense that Christ's kingdom is not of this world. If you choose to be a Christian, you're going to suffer for it. Yeah? That's just the deal. I've left Bob alone a bit on Sunday, purely because he is talking about a lot of true things. He knows his Bible reasonably well, but then because of what some people say is demonic influence, he forgets the key things. The key things is that he was talking about the sending out of the 72. Well, when the 72 was sent out, if people didn't want to listen to them, they were told to shake the dust off their feet and then go somewhere else. He also doesn't like to talk about the Blockbuster deal. Well, the Blockbuster issue was when the king of the universe, he's not just, I think that's being disrespectful to him, by the way. He was there, the creator of the universe. So here we have is the creator of the universe up against Pontius Pilate. Now, Pontius Pilate was a bit concerned. It says it in the description. I am paraphrasing horribly, but essentially, Jesus is there eyeball to eyeball with Pilate, and Pilate asks him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus says, "Yes, I am a king." Christ is king. And then he said, "But my kingdom is not of this world." I'm not sure what part of that Bob doesn't actually understand. His kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not of this world. Because he said when he was preaching that the kingdom of God is near. And it says in, I think, 1 Peter that, we are a holy nation. That is a spiritual term. It is not referring to go round starting crusades, starting violence. And so Bob doesn't understand his Bible. Now, obviously, the Bible has to be read in context. This is why I do not like people who pull verses here and pull verses there. Just go down to Speaker's Corner to find that out. You have to look at the message in its entirety. Jesus came to save the world. He came to save us from our sin. He offered a solution. He offered himself as the perfect sacrifice. Now, I've had an argument with another religious nutter. His work was completed on the Friday. That's why he said it is finished. And so we got into a very silly technical discussion because it's like a circular argument. The fact that he died, he paid the price for sin. So if you've ever been in court, the judge will basically sit there, and if you've committed a crime, he'll either send you to prison or he'll ask you to pay a debt. That's why lawyers and accountants get this. He paid the price, and he paid the price on the Friday. He rose again on the Sunday. That's why I got into a technicality where I dug myself a bit of a hole. I didn't. His work was completed on the Friday. He was with one of the guys who was also stuck there on a cross, which is pretty painful, by the way. And he also realized that Jesus had paid the price because he said, number one, you are God. Number two, you are sinless. And then asked him for forgiveness. And he didn't even say that. He said, please remember me when you come into your kingdom. So that was a pretty monumentous day. Now, of course, Jesus rose from the dead because he was God. You can't kill God. And what Usman and some of the other Muslims down there is they can't get the mystery of why, God became incarnate with the Virgin Mary. Very, very important stuff. It's very, very important stuff because essentially the mystery of who Jesus was. He was the greatest, most important man who ever lived. He raised the dead, he healed the sick, and he rose from the dead because he was God. But in order to be saved, you have to accept his sacrifice, believe who he said, believe he was who he said he was. Now, I believe he rose from the dead. I do know, though, that the work was finished on the Friday. But my challenge to Bob, I'm glad that he's actually had the bottle to put the conversation on his channel, because then I can use his camera footage, which is 10 times better than mine. Mine's round the wrong way, so, I'm usually round the wrong way. Jesus said it takes the mind of a child to accept this. You're in the poo spiritually. Now, I believe poo is used in the Bible, and thanks to David, I do need to. I've got into some bad habits with using words here, there, and the other. And I think there is a time and a place sometimes for language, but not on this video. So we are in a situation where our good works are like filthy rags. All have fallen short. But while we were still sinners, Christ offers us the gift of salvation. Now, Bob doesn't do that. Bob, he sort of does there somewhere in the noise. He is preaching a false Christian nationalism. And what the issue, and there are people more sort of qualified to say this, is he then glorifies what the church fathers were saying after the year 400. Well, after the year 400, it became a state religion. And I mean, actually, I've got to get back on Bob's course, actually. It's pretty easy, by the way. Although the only thing is I can't ask questions, though I could get an AI-generated voice. Hello, this is Peter here speaking. Well, I can do some voice impressions. So Bob's going to know it's me. And, of course, Bob doesn't have because he's a fascist, basically. He doesn't want to listen to honest discussion. I can have honest discussion with other people down at that park, but Bob doesn't have discussions. He shuts you down. He glorifies in what the church fathers did after the year 400. Well, there were Christians who left the empire. That is a fact. I asked a pastor friend. He said, you're right there. There were Christians who left the empire because they did not see this as a way forward. And of course, it's called the Roman Catholic Church. Now, for all you Roman Catholics still out there. And of course, the Roman Catholics were going, oh, but James, you were going to they sit there going, oh, James, you've been going to Catholic Mass. Well, I did go to Catholic Mass for about 3 weeks on a row, and it is demonic in places. Jesus does not turn into a bit of bread, but I was going for my own reasons. The thing is about the Catholic Mass is it's split into the ministry of the Word, the ministry of the Eucharist, and I can't remember the last bit. I mean, if the Catholic Church is true, I'm doing about a million years in. I'm doing a million years in purgatory if the Catholic Church is right. Hi, Pope Leo. But anyway, what happens with the Catholic Church is that it has actually perverted the gospel. And that is why in the year 1500, people started to read the Bible and say, well, this doesn't tally up. Now, Bob has been brave enough to actually put the interaction we had. I've got the full interaction, which I filmed. I have been leaving Bob alone for a while, but this is my final point, is this cart and horse problem. Yeah? The cart does not come before the horse. In other words, what he is doing is he is essentially arguing compulsion. Now, the liberals he can't stand are never going to listen to him, but they would listen to someone like David. And if they were really crazy, they'd listen to me. Because at the end of the day, there is no compulsion here. You cannot impose a state religion. When the Romans took over Christianity, it became the Roman Catholic Church, and they literally shut all the temples down and opened them up the next day. It was a bit like a coffee shop opening and reclosing. It was like under new management. And so you had the same practices under the guise of Christianity. So you had the way the priests dress, the candles, the praying to saints, the praying to Mary, the praying to statues, all that came in when it became an official and the religion of the Roman Empire. And so this is why I have got issues with Bob. I don't have an issue with what he says about Islam. He's generally right about that, although sometimes he actually doesn't go into enough detail. I can work with this guy. The thing is that we need to set aside differences, because there's no chance of Pope Leo or an armada turning up anytime soon. I'd say that was pretty next to zero. So you have to have a bit of a sense of humor with the dude. And apparently he's got married. I mean, they say marriage softens people, but he needs to learn to engage in conversations. He needs to take a leaf out of Charlie Kirk's book, because he is no Charlie Kirk. Yeah. Now, he claims Charlie Kirk was a humanist. Maybe he was. I need to go and investigate that. But I deal in facts. There is no such thing as a Christian nation.